Hi, I'm Eng-Beng Lim from Theatre Arts and Performance Studies. What do drag queens, Cookie Monster, and art have to do with the occupation? What does performance have to do with the protests? Everything and everything that has to do with the radical reconfiguration of social space, the denaturalization of normal relations, and solidarities across difference. Let's consider a few flashpoints. Consider these queer axioms, street wisdom, WikiLeaks sightings that constitute a rough collage of our times. Starting with RuPaul, who says, "You gotta work." That's an actual self-made poster circulating on the street. Meanwhile, on Occupy Sesame Street, Cookie Monster says 99% of the world's cookies are consumed by 1% of the monsters. The top 1% is earning nearly 25% of all household income in the USA. Why should students join Occupy Wall Street? Because student loan debt has now surpassed credit card debt, $950 billion. Have PhD, finished 3 postdocs, published 6 papers, will work for food. What sort of person thinks there's nothing wrong with asking the folks tasked with teaching our children to take a 20% cut on the $50,000 annual salary, but think it is a terrible idea to ask millionaires to pay an additional 3% more in taxes? The USA should invade the USA and win the hearts and minds of the population by building roads, bridges, and putting locals to work. Why are forgive and forget passes handed out to corporations and they are not handed out to those whose houses are foreclosed? Most recently, Goldman Sachs was forgiven £10 million interest in failed tax avoidance scheme, a drop in the bucket for a firm that gave out $15.3 billion in pay and bonuses last year. Its Wall Street head received $68 million in 2008, and at the height of the banking crisis, 100 London partners set the bonuses at £1 million each as a mark of constraint. Closer to home, the Providence, Warwick, Fall River metropolitan area topped the nation for Hispanic unemployment rates in 2010 at 25.2%. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Or shall we say, something is rotten in the USA. We smell corporate profits at record high as income gaps widen. 99% constituting a mainstream have to make a case for its own survival. Something is rotten. Let's be clear about the target here. And let me frame this as allegorical drama. Enter corporate access, irrationality, justifiable greed, the meritocratic moralist, mediocrity, media conglomerates, plutocrats, big money, America the abnormal, Koch brothers, Murdoch, propaganda, big oil. This is the cast of the great neoliberal reality show. It hides its modes of production, but passes as reality, as truth, as the moral high ground. We know the genre. They have way too many episodes to follow, and so obfuscates with noise and nonsense, the drama of their own lives and only theirs. The media outlets which they own and the stories that they tell or withhold about the occupations are themselves revelatory of its politics of visibility and valorizations. Often, they consort with classic theories of political protest to envision the body as an agitated irrationality that pushes people into chaotic mobs, sucked as they were into the fervor of unthinking crowds with unpredictable whims. We know they talk about the occupiers as bongo drummers, irrational mobs, but the occupiers are agents of change, and they are performing the possibilities of opening the space for an alternative discourse. There are several ways in which I could outline examples of performance interventions, including activists who have taken over various sites, such as the Sotheby auction house, where one by one, activists stood up to disrupt the auction, condemning Sotheby's attempts to de-unionize art handlers after having the most profitable year in 200 years, $680 million, a 125% raise for its CEO, and yet elimination of worker health benefits. We can also perform Zizek's human microphone, where he brings together the publics, reading his essay with the crowd as his human microphone. And I'd love for you to repeat this after me. This is how we live.
This is how we live.
We have all the freedoms we want.
We have all the freedoms we want.
But what we're missing is
the
language to articulate our non-freedom.
Language to articulate our non-freedom.
The way we are taught to speak about freedom.
The way we are taught to speak about freedom.
Falsifies freedom.
Falsifies freedom.
What is the place of art? What is the place of art? What is the place of such freedom in art? What kinds of spaces are open? A recent report points to the fact that the top 2% of arts organizations received 55% of foundation for the arts in 2009. Only 10% of arts funding was explicitly meant to benefit underserved populations. And the report concludes that arts funding is supporting a wealthy white audience. I'm going to end by pointing out that the discussion is one about the futures of public goods, for the common good, collective organizing, and redefining the mainstream. It's a discussion to deprivatize public institutions and to engage in the nuanced rhetorics of solidarity that moves away from just the disenfranchisement of the middle class and extending it to wider disenfranchised peoples, including the homeless, the so-called illegal immigrants, the queers who don't marry, and welfare queens. So act, sachet, consume, make art. This is your generation's and our generation's 60s. Own it, occupy it with your compatriots in Taipei, Korea, occupy Wall Street, occupy USA. Thank you.
We're going to ask